Hey guys, John from JohnMurrayHeadshots.com here. I was supposed to go live and talk on Instagram Live or on LinkedIn Live about imposter syndrome. And due to technical difficulties, because that's what happens when you work from home, it's not happening. So I'm going to do this now and I'm going to do it through video and I'm going to share it out there. I just want to talk about imposter syndrome and my experiences of imposter syndrome and where that leaves me. Because look, I'm no expert on imposter syndrome, but I do understand it and I do understand what it feels like and I do understand, what it's like to live with imposter syndrome. When I went to school, I didn't really fit in. I played basketball, but the lads who played basketball were all from, Dalkey and Killiney and like nice areas in Dublin, and I was from the city centre. There was other lads in the school who played football and soccer and stuff like that, and they were in Gaelic and they were all from kind of Ringsend. They were from near enough to where I'm from, but I didn't really fit in with them either because, that wasn't my thing. And for a long time, I really struggled with confidence issues. I really struggled with just understanding who I was. And because I wanted to be like them, I wanted to fit into those little social cliques, and I didn't. And I think that was my first experience, even though I didn't have a label for it, of superiority complexes or inferiority complexes. So I was living a lot with an inferiority complex, which is imposter syndrome. It's so now people probably think that I have my crap together, that I'm speaking on stage and I'm working with multinational clients and that I seem to have all of my ducks in a row, but I really don't. There's days where I'm floating around in my own little world and I just feel like I'm lost. I haven't a clue what I'm doing. So what I want to do is I want to address that. I want to have a conversation about that and I want to make it known that, look, I seem like I have my crap together. I'm talking on stages and doing all these really, really cool things and people are asking me to do things, but, I'm still one of those people who's floating around thinking, oh, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. Now, I'm not even talking about, look, I have a lot of clients from headshots. I have a lot of friends who are comedians, actors, radio DJs, all that sort of stuff. And I've gone to premieres with them and, all the really cool stuff, or the red carpet kind of glitzy glam stuff. And I've stood in the background when they're having their photographs taken. And that's not imposter syndrome. That sense of, I don't really belong here, that's not it. It's in your own life, in your own professional life, in your own experiences, how you feel that you're lost and how you feel that you're not belonging there. I've had these conversations with many, many, many people and they all tell the same kind of stories. Every single one of them have the same experiences. And imposter syndrome is caring. It's that sense of I'm not qualified enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not talented enough. Somebody's going to tap me on the shoulder and say, sorry, it's all over. We've caught you. And I get that a lot. I get it a huge, huge amount. I'm going to tell you a story because this obviously has to be very short as opposed to the live stream going for about 15 minutes. So about a year ago, Simon Haig reached out to me after hearing me speak at another book launch for Joseph Maguire, the profiler, the body language expert and profiler. And he said, would you speak at my book launch? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? Happy enough to. I enjoy having a bit of fun and talking. And I said, what's it about? And I had agreed to speak at the book launch. And when I agreed to speak at the book launch, it was, yes, of course, why not? Like, you're a friend of Joseph's, I'm happy enough. And I said, what's the book about? And he said, deal making. And I thought to myself, goes to show what sort of deal maker I am. I just agreed to do something without actually knowing what it was. And I had said yes, and I wasn't going to renege on that. So I carried on for the next couple of months while Simon was having the book prepared and while it was being printed and stuff like that. And we went to Trinity College for the book launch. And Simon told me the person before me was Kingsley Aikens and the person after me was Marshall Goldsmith. And that's when the imposter syndrome kicked in. I was thinking, oh, what am I getting myself into? For the next couple of months after finding out who was on the speaking panel, I was absolutely crapping myself. I was having sleepless nights. For what? I was going to speak at a book launch. I was going to have a bit of fun with some people. it wasn't the big thing. It wasn't the biggest thing in the world. But, the sense of vulnerability with me was telling me that if you screw this up, you're just going to ruin your reputation. It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes worth of a talk. But I felt I was going to destroy myself and I was going to make myself look like a fraud by not having a clue what to talk about. And I don't really make deals. I really don't make deals. I have my prices on my website. They're my set prices, and people follow them. It's just pay them because that's the prices, and if that's what I've come to earn. So I spent months thinking, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? And I went off on a whole journey of exploring deal making and how we make deals with ourselves psychologically, how we make deals socially, how the history and the evolution of deal making, way, way, way back. And that made sense to me. Total sense. I went in. Sean Melly, president of the Trinity College Business School, was the first person to speak, and he was brilliant. And when he was brilliant, I was sitting there thinking, I used to get thrown out of Trinity College for rollerblading. And now I'm in Trinity College going to make a speech and talk about the psychology of deal making. Then Kingsley got up. And Kingsley stood there and he was talking to everybody about how he once asked Roy Disney for $10 million and how he was involved with Coca-Cola and how he was involved in the International Fund for Ireland. And I was to go next. I've never asked anybody for $10 million in my life. So I was freaking out, absolutely freaking out sitting there. And that was a massive point of imposter syndrome for me. Like, I do not belong here. These people are superstars. They're people teaching in business schools. They're people who are running business schools. They're people who, I know Kingsley recently was working with the Libyan government. Lads. And I sat there thinking, like, name drops like Disney, and like, how am I supposed to cope with that? How am I supposed to match that? Or how am I supposed to follow that? And then thinking, Marshall Goldsmith is coming after me. Like, I'm going to make a total show of myself here. So I got up and I told some stories and I explained the psychology behind imposter syndrome. And I think some of that even makes sense in imposter syndrome because we're hardwired to see other people having more than us or being better than us. Because for millions and millions of years, everything was everybody's and we only took what we needed. We went out and if you needed carrots, you had carrots. If you needed to eat, you went out and you got what you needed to eat. And then about 6,000 years ago, we had the agricultural revolution. 16,000 years ago, sorry. Get your facts right, John. Imposter syndrome, because John's making mistakes and John doesn't feel like he should be making mistakes. So 16,000 years ago, we had this thing called the agricultural revolution, and it wasn't like, farm animals were kicking up and they were killing people in some sort of Orson Welles-y thing. It was somebody had made a decision. Do you know what? It would probably be easier if we had all of the same crops in the same place. And we put all the carrots over here and all the vegetables over here and, put all the whatever else over here. And we keep all the sheep together, and it just makes sense to do that because it's easier to pick all of that stuff out of the ground or all of that stuff off of a bush at the same time. Now, I'm speculating but it just makes sense that somebody thought, you know what, this is just easier rather than going to different fields for different things. So that's a massive psychological kick in the teeth for people because all of a sudden you can't just have whatever because it's there and because you need it. It was now a case of my carrots are my carrots, and if you want some of those, you're going to have to give me some broccoli for it. We're going to have to trade here. So you can't just take what you need because it's not yours to take anymore. So for millions and millions of years, even before we were human, we just took what we needed. We ate what we needed. We had what we needed, and now we have to have a trade-off to get that. So that was a massive psychological shift. But that gave rise to gentrification. Like, so that's 5,000 or 6,000 years of pillaging and plundering and taking and Vikings and all that sort of stuff. That's another massive psychological kick in the teeth, because what that is doing is it's telling us that, others are going to take from us. So if somebody has more than you, with gentrification, we saw 10% of the population were living on the efforts of 90%, but we're now in a superiority complex. Superiority. And what that's telling us is that other people have more than us, other people are better than us, other people are cooler than us, other people have what they need to have, and we don't belong there, which is imposter syndrome. You don't belong in that castle. You don't belong in that kind of high powered office. You don't belong in that place. And I think one of the big things is that one of the best attributes in imposter syndrome is that feeling of, I don't belong here, because what you do is you stretch yourself to make sure that you feel like you belong there, or you've earned your place. If you've got two people on par and both of them have imposter syndrome when they're hanging around with each other or when they're working with each other, they're thinking, he's much better at this than I am. I need to up my game. And if the other person's probably in a similar position and they're doing the exact same thing, so they're upping their game, and all you're doing is you're pitting against each other to improve the game overall. And, I get that a lot. I get that sense of dread. I get that sense of, oh my God, what am I doing here? I've walked into board meetings. I'm on the national board of Junior Chamber International in Ireland. And I remember when I was on the Dublin board, walking into a meeting, and it happens a lot, and people are throwing acronyms around, and I'm sitting there kind of writing them down on a piece of paper so I can Google them afterwards, and I felt like I didn't belong there. I wasn't good enough to be there, but I'd been asked to be on that board because somebody else saw value in what I do. I went on to the national board. I was asked by the incoming president to be the National Director of Training and Development and Individual Development for members. And Ronan had asked me to be on that board. And I graciously accepted. And I was thinking to myself, what am I doing? What am I taking on? I don't know what I'm taking on. And I had a few conversations with people about the fact that I felt really uncomfortable going onto a national board of an international organization because I didn't really feel I belonged. And that's, again, imposter syndrome. That's me experiencing imposter syndrome, even though people are seeing value in what I'm doing. People see value in me, and people see value in the experiences that I put out there and in the level of work that I put out there and the things that I do for other people. So they see value in what I'm doing, even though sometimes I don't. A lot of the time, I don't. I think that's one of the biggest things around imposter syndrome. And if you're in any sort of position whatsoever and you're experiencing imposter syndrome, it's understanding the fact that other people have seen value in you. Other people have seen value in the things that you do, and they've asked you, or they've given you permission to be in that position. That's one of the biggest things that I use to overcome imposter syndrome, is that people see value in me. I keep getting asked to do podcasts. People keep asking me to do interviews, radio interviews. And they're asking me because they see value in the things that I do. People put you into the position that you're in, whatever job you're in, whatever kind of experience you're in life. If you're looking at your wife going, what is she doing with me? She's not going to wake up one morning and look at you lying on the pillow and go, who are you? What are you doing in bed? What are you doing in my bed? That's not going to happen, even though sometimes you feel, oh my God. And that's vulnerability. That's all that is you're experiencing vulnerability, and vulnerability is not something to be ashamed of. Vulnerability is just, it's where we are, or it's, it's where we are and we own it. And if you freeze under vulnerability, you're just gonna flake. And if you don't freeze when you're vulnerable, what you're gonna do is you're just gonna own the experience. You're gonna step up and you're gonna do what it is that you need to do. And when you do that, it puts you in better positions, and it puts you in stronger positions, and you end up talking on stages, talking on podcasts, doing all these bits and pieces because you haven't stopped and frozen. When you stop and freeze, it just means that you're uncomfortable. It means that your logical thinking brain is saying, this is an uncomfortable situation, do not be in it. And you've backed away. And if you constantly back away, that becomes who you are. You've backed away for your whole life. But if you step up and you step forward and you do the things like talking at book launches, even though you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about around deal making because you don't make deals, you know, then all you're going to do is you're going to shy away, or you can stand up and you can do it. And standing up and doing it and thinking, you know what, it's not going to kill me. Those hormones are there to protect you from being killed, because that's what those stress hormones are about. Cortisol, epinephrine, glucagon. They're released as fight or flight reaction hormones, but you don't need to fight because somebody's only asking you to take on a role, or somebody's only asking you to do something very basic. It's not going to be something that's going to affect your actual life. It's not going to kill you. Um, this would have been so much easier with Q&A, or having a conversation around imposter syndrome, but this is my experiences of imposter syndrome. I know it happens quite a lot. It happens to me all the time, and I do get imposter syndrome. I get imposter syndrome when I'm asked to talk at things. I get imposter syndrome when I'm asked to do certain things. And sometimes I have to say, do you know what? I do understand this, and I do understand it from a point of view that maybe some other people don't, or maybe I have an answer to questions that people have been asking themselves for a long time, or they don't really know how to navigate that in an internet world where everybody can go onto Google, and it's very difficult sometimes to explain those feelings. So I hope somebody got something from this. If you have any questions or anything like that, fire them over to me. I'm always open to conversations. Maybe we can even hook up a Zoom chat. And if we hook up a Zoom chat, then I'm happy enough to have conversations around imposter syndrome and my sense of imposter syndrome and how I generally feel. Especially when I get those little bouts, those little flurries, where I'm about to do something, or I've been asked to do something and I'm not really feeling it. I want to do it. I think it's good for me. I think it's going to be good for whoever's listening, but I'm really crapping myself. And how I overcome that. How I overcome that is I just remind myself constantly that, Jesus, somebody sees value in what I do. They really believe in me and how I do this. So, that's my thing. That's my little thing on how I experience or overcome imposter syndrome time and time and time again. Maybe one of these days it's not going to work, but look, it is what it is. I'll have to come up with new coping mechanisms. But yeah, that's my experience of imposter syndrome. If you have any questions, fire them over. John@johnmarieheadshots.com, or kind of connect in the comments below. And that's me.